Hi, this is Kelly, and I'm here to take a look at a deck with you called the Goddess Temple Oracle Cards by Sarah Perini and Elena Albanese. Now, I was watching, I stumbled on a video by Boho Tarot, and I will put a link to her video below because I do think it's really, well, I like her videos in general, but I would recommend that you take a look at her. I like how at the end she showed some decks that she thought would go well with the deck, which I agreed, especially on the one that caught my interest was Tarot of the Hidden Realms, which is a deck which I love. I will pull that out as well in a minute. And I agreed, when I was watching her video, I was like, oh yeah, this would actually go really well with that deck. But I also really thought that it would go very well in concept, if not perfectly with art, with the Llewellyn Tarot. So if you've watched my channel enough, you probably know this was my very first tarot deck, was the Llewellyn Tarot, and it was my only tarot deck for about 9.5 years as far as I can tell. And the Llewellyn Tarot is a tarot deck based on the Welsh mythological cycle. And so the major arcana is organized in such a way in which you have sort of the names of the people that it may be associated with in the tale, and then there are the longer stories of those cycles in the guidebook as well. And so some of the people that we see show up in this deck are also people that we would see in this beautiful and wonderful deck, in which I need to make. I do believe I have a walkthrough of my trimmed version. I repurchased it. My original deck I still have, but I trimmed it down to just the photos. But I actually ended up missing the borders because this is how I read them for so many years, and so I bought another copy so that I had it with the borders as well as my original one without the borders. And so I do keep promising to do another walkthrough. I'm going to leave these out though because I wanted to show those when they came up in the deck. But many of these, not all of these, but there are associations. Carnunu's as the wild huntsman or the horned god. The horned one here shows up in this deck. Now this is not actually Pwyll. Pwyll shows up in here. Pwyll is the father, so Pwyll is the husband of Rhiannon, and they have a son, Purides, I'm gonna say it correct. I'm totally blanking. But it's the Lord of David or Dyfed, however you want to say that. Definitely comes up in this deck. Oh my goodness, I don't speak Welsh. Pradera. These are things that I grew up reading and not speaking. But anyways, that is the son of, so hanging from this bowl is the son of Rhiannon and Pwyll. And Pwyll, the Lord of Dyfed, shows up in this deck. So that is certainly in there. And the story about the land of Dyfed is in there as well. Taliesin definitely shows up in his younger form as Gwydion. Alexa, stop. Sorry, that was an alarm for, actually this nail was all chipped and I put a cover on it and that takes 5 minutes. There you go. Anyways, Rhiannon is obviously here. Caradwyn is here. Those are the ones I kind of saw quickly that was like, oh, those are in that deck. So this is not a Welsh-based deck, but it is an Avalonian tradition-based deck in which there is crossover there, and so that piqued my interest. The other thing that piqued my interest is that while this is most certainly a goddess-based deck, it is it does speak or at least nod to, the male cycle as well are included, although this is most definitely a female-centric deck, no question. But I did like that there was inclusion of the male. So you have the maiden, I think she does the maiden, the lover, the mother, and the crone, and then there are 4 of the masculine cycles as well. And you also so I think that that's important to have, and I liked that they did that. the stories of King Arthur, the Avalonian crossovers are something that have always interested me, and I have another deck called The Mists of Avalon. It is not based on the book. It is based on the Avalonian cycle, which is one that I quite enjoy also. So I had to take a peek at this. So I have already edged it, so sorry you don't get to see the white edge. This is the front. Of course, it would normally be white. It wasn't an exact perfect match. I thought it was going to be darker, and if I put another coat on, it would be, but I do like the way that it looks. So for right now, I'm just leaving it alone. But I think if I put another coating, or even put something warmer, that might deepen that, but I'm going to leave it alone for right now. So anyways, that would normally be white, obviously, if you hadn't edged it. So there is that. So let's talk for a minute. Here's the backings, which I actually do think are quite beautiful. I like the, crescent moons and all that. Let's talk a little bit about the book, because I think that this is certainly where this, as with most low Scarabeo decks, this is a low Scarabeo deck. The box is gorgeous. It's got the little cutouts. It's nice and sturdy. It's got the little ribbon. The box is fabulous, as always, here. No complaints there. The book, however, is typical low Scarabeo, in which most of the book is in other languages. We have 36 pages of for what is in many ways a complex system. We had the same discussion in an oracle I just did a walkthrough, another oracle of Los Scarabeos that we just did a walkthrough of. It doesn't give due weight to the complexity of the system or the concepts, and I think that that's too bad. She does talk about how that we are looking at the traditions of ancient Proto-European peoples. And it says here, contemporary reinterpretations of history, rewritten by women of wisdom, give ample space to the analysis of feminine figures and the rich symbolism attached to them. According to these interpretations, feminine symbolism, especially that of the magical religious type, probably has origins that can be traced back to the culture of ancient Europe, to Neolithic and Paleolithic times. This system can be described as a mutual or Gaelic culture that is neither patriarchal nor matriarchal, but based on collaborative relationships, agricultural, peaceful, and a naturalistic religion centered on the worship of a mother goddess of the earth, or she herself is identified with the earth or nature of all living things. They associate these associations to the archaeological material discovered by scholars such as Marja Gimbutas, something like that, and the subsequent studies conducted on those materials. The most important work by Gimbutas, which collects together the results of her research, is entitled The Language of the Goddess, Myth and Cult of the Mother Goddess in Neolithic Europe, if that's something that you're interested in. So it does talk about, these types of things and sort of the deconstruction of this only patriarchal central ideology and sort of breaking that down. Now, one of the problems that I typically have, if you've watched my channel, is that in the deconstructing of patriarchal concerns, replacing that with a matriarchy is, in my personal opinion, not the answer, right? The answer of taking one very masculine-centered ideology and replacing it with an only matriarchal ideology misses the mark for me. I understand why that happens, because it swings in the other direction, but I think the goal should be now I don't think that this deck fully does that for sure. This is definitely a goddess-based deck, but it does understand that we're trying to get back to a place that is neither patriarchal nor matriarchal, but is a mutual or collaborative relationship between the genders, and I think also a greater understanding of the diversity of what it means to be gendered, right? So I like that the discussion is there, although certainly the focus of this deck is goddess based, and so it is very much in that matriarchal vein. It definitely is following an Avalonian it goes in and talks about the culture of Avalon. It definitely puts a lot of emphasis on the teachings of Kathy Jones, who is apparently the founder of the Temple of the Goddess of Glastonbury, England, who has been teaching at the Glastonbury Goddess Temple for 30 years. There is a vibrant Avalon community, which includes people from all over the world, provides the opportunity for people to transform their lives and live in connection with the harmonizing and creative energies of the goddess and the Lady of Avalon. So this is definitely based on Avalonian lore, and you will see this in some of the goddesses chosen. So there is a Wheel of the Year. So the first cards are set up with this understanding. I don't know if is it the first one, Caradwyn? Yeah. So we have Caradwyn. Caradwyn is a Welsh goddess. We have Calec, which I know I pronounced incorrectly. It's again how I've gotten used to pronouncing it growing up. This is an Irish-Scottish goddess. We have Brigid or Brigid, which is an Irish goddess. We have Rhiannon, which is a Welsh goddess. We have Damnu, which is an ancient sort of pre-Danu. This would be with the Fomerians. We have Banba, which is an Irish. We have some, actual based on sort of those traditions, those Irish, Scottish, Welsh goddesses. But then we do have a couple that, from what I can tell, such as Artha is can you think of it like a family line of Arthur, that type of energy that is, I would say, Avalonian. We have Care. There is a goddess Care that I believe is a Greek goddess name, which is like a goddess of death of some sort like that, but this is not with that, because I was kind of surprised. I'm like, why is this midsummer? Like, it didn't make sense, but that is actually what I can tell is an Avalonian goddess, so not one that you would associate with any of these other cultures. So two of the wheel goddesses are what I would consider Avalonian based versus, of the mythology of the cultures. So that makes sense, right? Because this is based on the Avalon. So we have that. It doesn't give you a lot. Like, Caradwyn doesn't here at least tell you about Caradwyn at all. It's more just associating what it means in the Wheel of the Year. Now, there is another section that does go through Caradwyn, and how you would sort of read that, right? What does she bring? But again, it doesn't really tell you anything about the myth of Caradwyn. So you would certainly have to do your due diligence and go look that up and do your work for that, for sure. So the cards are split up into categories, something that I do like. I feel like we're seeing this a lot in Los Scarabeo decks. The problem is we're having these wonderful categories and these deep dives, but then we're having so little text that it's kind of ridiculous, right? We have the Goddess of the Wheel cards. Then we have Archetypes of the Sacred Feminine and Archetypes of the Sacred Masculine. I really love that that's there. Again, everything else I believe is female oriented, but at least we have the Sacred Masculine acknowledged here. We have the cards of the Four Temples, which I really love. Those are the 4 element cards. And then we have sort of the journey more of the path of the querent. And there's actually a querent card in the Cauldrons of Transformation. So I quite like that. And again, referencing back to Kathy Jones, who a lot of the Avalonian aspect of this has been drawn from. So it does go in and explain sort of where you would see these 4 types of cards, which I quite like. Some ways to use the cards, a card of the day or card of the year, reading the triple goddess, which is interesting because there's actually 4 aspects shown in the deck, so you would think it would be a 4-card reading. And then of course doing a Wheel of the Year reading here and how you would read those. And then it goes into the rest of the cards. So you have a paragraph that comes from the aspect of I am. I actually have found I am statements in cards to be often very helpful. in something, especially with this, these are the archetypes of the sacred feminine and the archetypes of the sacred masculine. Now, the sacred masculine have actual names, and these are definitely associated. So Gwen is Taliesin when he was younger. Quill, I already told you, that is the husband of Rhiannon. Cernunnos, the horned god. And then, of course, the green man is that more larger. We see the green man across many different cultures. But then with the maiden, lover, mother, and crone, we don't have specific names. But I think that's because we had, 8 goddess cards plus the Lady of Avalon. So we have 9 specific goddess titles. So I can see why that wasn't necessary to do that. And then we have the 4 temples of the element, and then the cards of the cauldrons of transformation, which is, again, starts with the traveler, which is the querent card. I do love decks that have querent cards in them, and then sort of along the path. I did feel like a couple of these almost felt a little bit redundant in the fact that, say, although the fire dream is different, but we do have sort of like some fire, some water. We already have fire and water cards. We also have, say, the harvest, but we have the wheel of the year, so we already have the goddess of the harvest. But I do think those are different energies, and I would have to say, as I use it, whether or not those start to feel redundant. But it's just a couple. We have the Moon Maiden, which is nice because obviously the goddesses are following the cycle of the sun, and so on. So we're going to take a look at those. So you do get, like a paragraph of each. But these are not going to go into much. Like, example, for Gwen, it doesn't even say who he is. Same thing with Quill. I think it's somewhere in here. Does it say Lord of Dyfed? No, I don't think that does actually. So it doesn't really tell you anything about that they are actually mythological, and maybe just a blurb of who they are, which I think would have been nice. Same thing with the goddesses. So definitely one of those that you either have to have a little bit of a base in Avalonian ideology, and certainly in some of the Welsh, Irish, and Scottish mythologies. This is not a place you could just stay here and kind of get everything out of it. And that is simply going to always be the case if you only have 35 pages, right, to be able to write something. So I think that's too bad. But if it interests you enough, and then you'll be willing to go find that information. If it doesn't, then you won't. Or if you already have you already have some of that knowledge, then it helps you to know where to go look, right? Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit more. So again, I think this is just a problem with Lo Scarabeo. I generally like the card quality, although this is quite slippy. But like the book's nicely made, the box is like a linen, nicely made. I would prefer, obviously, to have more of the text there, but I also am of the mindset that if you're interested in it, then you'll be willing to go read some books on it. So it's that kind of if and or the other. Again, I love the backings. I think they're gorgeous. So here we have Caradwyn. Now, of course, this is how I see Caradwyn, just because I've been using this deck for so very long. I do think the art style, this is a very warm toned deck. The whole deck is very, very warm toned. This is not. This is, you can see, more greensy, more of a blue toned, I would say. Even in the greens, they're usually a little bit more greeny toned. So it's definitely a cooler toned deck. But I do think that these ideologically and even in looks wise would go with this deck. That's something that you could use together with this deck. But anyways, here we have Caradwyn, and there's nothing here to tell you. Their wheel starts with Samhain, which a lot of people's do. My wheel starts with Yule, so I would order these a little bit differently. This would be my last card, but you know, we all obviously approach those things differently. But there's nothing here to tell you that this is Caradwyn and that she is associated with Samhain or a keyword or anything like that. And that goes across the board. They, of course, when we get to these, they make a little more sense. The title reflects what we're looking at. So you do, I think, need to, and again, I feel like you should, right? So if you don't know who Caradwyn is, but you're going to work with a deck that has Caradwyn in it, then I think that taking the time to learn about Caradwyn is going to be important. And if you're not willing to do that and to see the associations, now again, if you just know that this is starting at Samhain and the first one is associated with Samhain, you can start to bring in some of those ideologies and understanding of Samhain, which is kind of because this is being associated with the Wheel of the Year, you get a little bit of layering in by the number, but you're going to have to do that work. And what you'll get, so for example, let's do this here. So what we're going to get with Caradwyn, and I'm not going to necessarily look to that. Yeah, I actually have two places in this deck with the goddesses. But for the actual, I would say, meanings of the cards, she brings you the vision of your lights and shadows, of what is hidden in the subconscious, so that you can be accepted, healed, and transformed. She challenges you to overcome your fears and resistances, to heal your inner wounds, and shows you your weaknesses and your fragility. She bids you to let go of everything that is no longer of any use, to cut relationships, because again, this is Samhain, this is the second half of fall in which we are releasing energy. So she bids you to let go of everything that is no longer of any use, to cut relationships and forms of behavior that are not of any functional advantage to your path of growth. So we can really see that energy being pulled in of the Samhain time period with the meaning of the card. So there we have that. Again, image, I think the artwork is beautiful. I don't know which one here, Sarah Perini and Alina Albanese. I don't know who is the artist here. I like that both are listed equally. Let's see if it tells us. Artwork is by Alina Albanese. So I love that the artist and the creator are put on the same footing here. So that to me is fantastic of Los Garabio. But anyways, the artwork is really beautiful. I think she's an amazing artist and it's quite beautifully done. This, I believe, is pronounced Kalia with a h at the end of it that I can't pronounce, apparently. But that's what it says, Kalia. Something like that. This is an Irish goddess, and of course this is associated with Yule. Again, I do feel like you get the feeling of winter here. You get that energy of Yule there. And again, as long as you know that you're starting, you can just think of ravens and crows at Samhain, then you know you kind of at least can tap into the seasons and then go forth, and learn about the goddess itself after reading what little bit is given here. This I thought was really pretty. Like this, you know, some people say Brigid, some people say Brigid. I tend to go back and forth, but Brigid is an Irish goddess. And what I really like here is this is being associated with Imbolc. But it is a very youthful, right? This is a very youthful Brigid. Which you don't often see, right? I feel like you see often, you know, obviously mostly full-grown, very powerful energy of Brigid. And I actually kind of like this. And apparently this is being associated with the maiden goddess. And so this means that, of course, we have a younger goddess here. And I think that that is really beautiful. I just liked that. Somehow that really triggered something for me. Now here we have Artha. This is being associated with Ostara, and this is being associated with the archetype of the bear goddess. You have sort of definitely a hairy an animal like cloak around her, and it definitely talks about her being associated with the bear waking up in spring. You see her as more youthful energy, moving from the maiden goddess to a younger, although I don't think it even talks about teenagey energy, and I don't really get that vibe here. She seems to be more matured in my opinion, but I do like that there is a bear goddess here, and again, this is, I believe, more of an Arthurian, an Avalonian goddess versus a mythological, pre-Avalonian mythological goddess here, but I do quite like her. Here we have Rhiannon, and this is at Beltane. This is the season of love and the encounter between the feminine and the masculine, so we definitely have that sort of energy of sowing the fields, so to speak, but sowing them in the bed with Rhiannon here. Next we have Damnu. Now Damnu is, I don't think there's a whole lot of information here. She is pre-Danu, right? And definitely associated with Fomerian mythology. But what I did love this watery vision of her, and I'm going to try to pull out a little bit more if I can find more about her. They definitely associate her even with the Lady of the Lake, which you certainly get that, and I love the whale energy that's here. Now I will say, let's just pause for a moment. Here we obviously have the Raven's Crow energy here. We obviously have the stag energy here. Does they even note that on here? Ancient, definitely associated with the crone. Air element, north direction, ice and snow, Lady of the Winds. Yeah, it doesn't say the animal, but we obviously have a horned sort of deer energy here. This looks to be a baby wolf to me with Brigid. It doesn't say on here, whereas some of them do. And so again, I do wish that the associations were more clearly laid out, because like this one, it says associated with the bear goddess. I'm assuming that's a baby wolf. I'm just gonna, so that's all three of my energies here. We have the bear goddess here. With Rhiannon, we have some kind of a bird here associated. I'll have to see, I can't think off the top of my head what might be associated bird-wise with Rhiannon, but we do have a bird here. We have a whale with the water energy. So you definitely through the 6 of them have a strong animal connections, which I do like to see added in here. But anyways, I love this picture, and it definitely has a mermaid quality. I love that the hair looks like kelp. And I like the connection to the Lady of the Lake, of course. I love that. Now here we have obviously a baby with Care. Again, this is another one that is associated, I believe, an Avalonian goddess versus another one from a prior mythology, but it's really beautiful. And so we have the different animals. We are also animals, and so we see young animals, really, especially here. That's a skinned animal, right? But so we have the young of a human. That makes sense. It's a pretty image. Again, I love the art here. And here we have a young fox with Banba. This is an Irish with a Tuatha connections here with her. And so we have her with a baby fox. And so that's the 8 cycles of the wheel, all associated with different animals and concluding the human animal. Then we have at the center of the wheel stands the Lady of Avalon, which is really a beautiful, and it's obviously important to the Avalonian mythological cycles. It says here, the center of the wheel, Lady of Avalon, goddess of the center of the wheel, one and multiform. Her color is purple, the goddess without a name and with 1,000 names, who gives and takes her name from her land Avalon. Her priestesses, queens, women of wisdom, Vivian and Morgana, and all of the women who have honored her over the centuries carry on the spiritual teachings that come from her. Goddess of the healing of the soul, who challenges you to know yourself deep down, to manifest your truth, and to be consistent with with the path you have chosen, lady of the island of the other world, guardian of souls, bearer of visions and of knowledge. I mean, I think that's a great description of the Lady of Avalon. Is there another one over here? Because obviously she is important to this understanding. Lady of Avalon, she brings you introspection, magic, transformation, connection, inspiration, unconditional love. She looks at your inner wounds and brushes you with her healing touch. So I do quite like that. I think that that's well-written invocation of the Lady of Avalon, and I think it's beautiful. So that is the wheel cycle, starting with Samhain, going, and then of course at the center of the wheel is the Lady of Avalon. Again, I like that the Lady of the Lake is also referenced here. We have the connection, I'm assuming, to Arthur, family line with Artha, and so you bring those in and it's subtle, but I think it's really quite beautiful. Again, if that's a cycle that you like to pay attention to or you enjoy. So and then we get to the 4 cards of the Sacred Feminine. I think this maiden is beautiful. I love, I believe I had to have been an archer in some point in another life. I'm very attracted to archery imagery. I have shot bows in the past, but it's not something in another life I would like to put more time into really learning to shoot a bow. But anyways, I am quite attracted to images with women with bows, and so here we have, I like the image here, shooting to the moon. So here we have the maiden, here we have the lover, and so again they start with sort of I am the maiden, goddess of the joyful smile, of the new beginnings, reawakening, joyful, exuberant, free. I carry the light and warmth of the fire of the earth on the surface. My touch is light but firm, and so on and so forth. So it's an I words that really sinks you into that energy. Whereas the I am the lover, a flowery face, a snake woman who is full self-consciousness. I know my body, I love it, and I live well within it. So they've added in the lover. We've recently looked at a deck that added in the guardian to the 4, and the lover, you know, would come in the, especially in the cycles that we see between the Lord and the lady in these types of cycles. It makes sense that we would have the lover before the mother. This was one of the reasons that I bought this deck. I am not going to lie. If you follow me, you know I love the movie Moana. I don't want to hear about the problems with Disney. I understand there are massive problems, but I love the movie Moana. It makes me cry. Her grandmother and her connection with her grandmother, and when the grandmother has died and changed into her animal form and comes sweeping underneath the boat, makes me cry every time. And the scene in which the fiery what you think is an evil fiery thing comes pounding through and Moana's meeting him in the middle. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it and makes me cry. I love Moana. When I need to feel back and empowered, I watch Moana. And in Moana, we see the god Mother Earth, right, as being sort of an island shape, and she kind of, when she is healed, she like lays back into her slumber mode. And so I just love, I also have a poem that speaks to mountain ranges that I wrote long ago about as in the shape of a woman. And so this image itself is certainly one of the reasons that I was like, okay, I have to have that deck, even if it's just to put the mother image out on my altar with this image, because I love it. I also love the frog that's right here. Okay, enough about that. Next we have the crone. I am the old woman, the wise, the one who transforms, the lady of death. I have lived a very long time, and I know every song, every story, every mystery. I am the keeper of the ancient traditions, the one who descended into the kingdom of shadows and can now show you the way. I do like these invocations. Again, I am a big fan of the Shaman's Oracle, in which John Matthew writes the invocations from the cards, or the I ams from the cards, and I use those. I read them out loud to my clients because I think they are the oracle. And this definitely has in the masculine or in the feminine. Now they don't do this in the archetypes of the masculine, and I really wish there's not a consistency here that I wish would have been there. Anyways, I do love these I do love those invocations of the I am. We don't get that when it goes to Gwion, the young, who is Taliesin when he was younger. We don't get that. And I wish that we would have, because I really enjoyed these, but you know, it is what it is. So here we have the male cycle now, the sacred masculine. So we have Gwion here as the young. We have Pwyll here as the lover. Obviously, this is probably when he's meeting Rhiannon, and that kind of youthful energy and the coming together of the feminine and masculine divine, which I think is quite beautiful. And then we have a strong Cernunnos. I do like him. I like his staff. I like his horned helmet, although I would have, I think, preferred the horns to be actually on his head, but you know, we can't have everything. I love this image of the horned one in this deck, but I do I do think that's quite powerful. And then we have the Green Man, and I think it's gorgeous. I think it feels very Green Man. It feels very Father Christmas in that powerful aspect of Father Christmas. I do love this image. So I believe those are the only 4 males that we'll see in the deck, but I really like their inclusion there and understanding that in terms of the realm of the divine, we have the both, and of course many that should be in between, but I really like that in the deck. So then we have the 4 temples of the elements. Again, I'm very elementally based in my practice, so we have the temple of air with sacred space of clarity of vision. We have the temple of fire as the sacred space of creativity and transformation. We have the temple of water with the sacred space of deep emotions and the abyss of consciousness. I quite like that. We have the temple of earth, the sacred space of the cave in the belly of Mother Earth, which I also really love. So I really like the temples of the 4 elements. I think they are fantastic. And again, I think the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. So we've had the sort of wheel of the year and of the goddess energy here with the Lady of Avalon at the center. We have the 4, in this case, 4 cycle of the sacred feminine. We have the 4 of the sacred masculine. Oops, I think I went a little too far. We have the, oh, okay, now I've messed it all up. I apologize. Oh well, you know, we saw them. We have the sacred masculine, and then we have the 4 elemental energies that are here at play. And then we move into sort of the journey and the cycle, kind of moving into that transformational journey that we can go on, starting with the traveler. This represents, this represents the querent and how and what cards show up around it. Again, this would be great for shuffling, for finding the querent and look at where they're coming from and where they're going to. I think it's going to be an amazing way to work with this particular deck. So I love decks that include that. So then we come to centering. So there's just different, sometimes short, sometimes longer when we get into this cycle. So for example, centering says, recall the importance of grounding and centering practices before embarking on meditation, a shamanistic journey, divination, or a ceremony. Remain grounded within the expansion of consciousness. So I do love this rootedness that we see here, and this kind of energy pouring down from the center and or also coming back up here. So it's quite a powerful image. Here we have the rebirth. I do love that the Fae energy here with the fairy kind of being reborn, which is quite beautiful. Here we have the fire dream. Recall the importance of the flame of creative and sexual energy. This is where it kind of makes me feel like, okay, we have the temple of fire. We also have, I feel like a fiery goddess. There was something else. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just that. And the Temple of Place is a place, right? That's tapping us into place. So I don't know. I think I might take that. But well, we have Rhiannon here, but this is more that's a different cycle. So I think I'm going to take that back. I think that this kind of waking up to this idea of the fire dream in the process of transformation, I think actually works quite well. So I'm going to take that back. Same thing with the water gift. We aren't talking about the place of the Temple of Water, that place situating us in place. This is talking about bringing water to, so it's a bit more of like a temperancy feel, where we're going to bring water and to bring the gift of water and pour that out, which does have a different energetic motion. So I'm going to take that back. We have the blessing and sharing of words. I do quite like that. The power of the voice with the blessing card, I think, is quite beautiful. We have the mirror. I always like mirror cards to know, observe, transform. It is almost identical, but it is it's not an identical mirror, even though it almost looks like it, but the arm is not reflecting the same tattoos on the top of the arm. She doesn't have the what almost seems like stepping into that fae or other world energy that the horns seem to relate to in this deck. She's still seeing that sort of other power, otherworldly power in the reflection of the mirror, which I think is really powerful. I do like that. I think this is such a strong card. It's like this vision card. She feels like she's having a vision. I think it's really well depicted. So I love that. I love this one. We see a lot of dancing fairy circles and sort of pagan decks and all that, which I love. But then we have this large dance here as well. And so either, we see this in two forms. This is a human, us in dance with the small fae energy, and or this is the goddess dancing and then we are dancing out. It has a very of the opening parts of, especially I think in this maybe all the seasons of oh my gosh, I'm blanking now, it was a book, I'm totally blanking. What is, all I can think of is Otherworld, and it's not called The Otherworld. Oh, now I'm going to have to pause and find it. Outlander. As soon as I pause it, I'm like, it's Outlander. Anyways, whether they're dancing, but we understand that they're dancing the bigger cycle. So I quite like this. This makes me very happy. Here we have gratitude, which is important, giving thanks. Honoring that energy upward. I like all the cauldron use here. I would definitely do a 3 cauldrons. I won't get started. I'm obsessed with 3 cauldrons. If you know me for other kinds of things, you'll know I'm obsessed with the 3 cauldrons. But I would definitely do a 3 cauldrons reading with this deck. Here we have initiation, which is of course an important part of a journey of transformation. I really love this inner child card. I love this dragon, earth, kind of an earth dragon, animal, furry dragon kind of feel. Whatever this is, I do appreciate it. It makes me smile, and it's that wisdom of the child, though, that can tap into these deep dragon energies or whatever this particular creature might be. I just think it's beautiful, and I think it's a great card. Here we have the Otherworld. I think this is beautiful. Look at this like mer creature here. We have sort of the Loch Ness monster here. We have some kind of interesting flying bird going on up here. It looks like you have stepped into another world, right? It's not reflective of just what our world is. So I do really like the artist here. Here we have the Owl Tower, which I think is beautiful. It's that more of that stepping back into a quiet space. Definitely more of a hermit energy here with the Owl Tower. The Dark Cave, always important to enter the cave. We definitely have cave, multiple cards that tap into the cave energy, which I love. It reminds me of the Hermit, right, of Terror of the Hidden Realms. Here we have the Labyrinth energy, which I love labyrinths. I like to walk labyrinths. You can find them to go and walk them. They're very powerful. And so sort of walking that sort of prescribed energy, taking you deeper and deeper and deeper, I think is a great card. We have the surrender. You're just gonna, I like that her shoulders are back. She is just surrendering into the beauty of the moment, and that she's about to go under, and you know, where is she going? I think that's a beautiful card. This is an interesting image here. We have the journey here. It says, live life as a wonderful inner or outer journey according to your intentions. You can fully enjoy exploring on a day-to-day basis that shows what shows itself in the present, which is the only true existing reality. Not the greatest, I think, of descriptions here, but the understanding of being present in the moment, right? When we look at the journey, sometimes we're looking at that longer picture, but we also need to pay attention to the day-to-day in this moment of the journey, which I think is quite powerful. Here we have the seeding, what you're going to sow and then what you're going to harvest. Again, I feel like we have these two energies already in the wheel of the year, but we do see those as separate goddesses, so I can understand it. Again, beautiful images. I love the harvesting here. I like the planting. Again, we see this, I think, throughout the wheel of the year and as the goddesses are placed, but these are very specific to that. I don't think they'll overlap too much. We'll see as we play out. I love having the Moon Maiden because, again, the cycle of the wheel is very much based on the cycle of the sun. So I do like having moon energy being pulled in here. That's good. I love this shapeshifter, adapting and shifting, and especially this kind of jellyfish shapeshifter, I think is really cool. It's a very interesting fae form feel that you don't see all the time, right? You're usually seeing very specific wolves, you know, shapeshifting into wolves, which I love, but I feel like this is a different take on it that is pretty cool, and it has that adaptability and flexibility feel within it, so I really like that. And then, of course, a shape-shifting that we would think about with the Selkies. I am obsessed with Selkies. I have been obsessed with Selkies a very long time, as long as I've known about Selkies, which has been a very, very, very long time. I've always been obsessed, so anytime there's a Selkie card, I am perfectly happy to hear this. This is an interesting one, though, because this is less to do than just about shape-shifting, right? But Selkies are really about connecting, right? How does a woman connect safely with a man? Now, again, it doesn't have to be, you know, in the stories, this is what we would see. Now, you know, physically in the world, could you be connecting to another woman? Yes. But it's about trusting outside of yourself and having to trust your powers, trust who you actually are on a powerful level, and to be able to connect with that. And how can we do that in a way in which we don't lose our wild side, in which we don't then have to leave everything that we've built to come away from that? So it's such a powerful story, I think, to anybody who has not been able to feel like you could fully be yourself, and that you had to lose some of who you are to adapt. This is going to make me cry. I feel like my life cycle has been one of the Selkie, that understanding of having to give something up of who I am to be accepted, either in the religion or in the long-term relationship that I was in, to have to give something up of myself to be able to function in that place, and that always deep longing to go back to that, but then you don't want to leave your children. And you know, it's very powerful cycle, I think, especially for women of my age and beyond, but I think is relatable past that as well. But this is, I think, a very powerful card, and it's not the same as just a shapeshifter card. There is really about how do we live in two different worlds, and is there a place in which we don't have to give something up to have them both. That is quite powerful. And then, of course, I love the Allies card, and I love that it's a bear. So again, for me personally, all of my strongest animal energy is reflected in the deck, which I love, but certainly in the feminine animal energy, that I relate to bear as strongly feminine, and it is probably my most interactive energy is with bear in a feminine context, and this deck feels strongly like those interactions, very much often in caves, often about my journey, often about these things. And so having bear here as an ally just again solidifies this as a deck that would be very deeply working at a personal level for me. So there we have that. Okay, let me scroll back out here. Cardstock, it is slippy. I would have rather it obviously not been this glossy, but as a whole, I like Los Scarabeo cardstock. I think I like their tarot cardstock. I don't know if it's the same as this. I feel like they used to have different cardstock that I liked more, but I could be wrong and just mixing things up. But it shuffles well. It holds up well. Again, I just would prefer not to have the slippy nature of it because it is quite slippy. But, you know, this isn't 78 cards. It is, oh, I don't even remember, probably 44 cards. Yeah, 45 cards actually. So it's easy to manage. But I find that these slippy type cardstocks often kind of bows a little bit, and it's got that, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's got a little bit of that clickiness. It's not to where you can't shuffle it, because some do that. But then when you lay it down on the table, now this is bowing the other way, which is kind of nice. But sometimes you start to get them where they like rotate when you try to lay them down on a hard table like I work with. But this so far doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. So again, they did have you pull like a one card, or again the four Maid, Mother, and Crone. Again, because this deck uses I'm trying to find it in my spread book here, or my spread section of my book. I have a couple 3 cauldrons that I like to do, and so either I think this comes out of an OM book that I really like, but this is the one that I use for the most part, where I have the Cauldron of Warming, which is that physical energy, the Cauldron of Motion, which is what's in flux and how you're shifting things, and the Cauldron of Wisdom, of what's coming down, and then understanding that the Cauldron of Warming lights the Cauldron of Motion, so what energy is going up, between the two, how those two interacting, and then of course Wisdom comes down right into the cauldron here, and so a card that reflects coming down. Like I could see doing something like that, or again just doing a 3 Cauldron of Wisdom, Cauldron of Motion, and Cauldron of Warming is how I would see myself probably primarily working with this deck, is based off of the 3 cauldrons. Which is a very old poem. It's probably the oldest Celtic poem that we have, really delineating how a worldview of energy points and the way in which energy works within in the body. And so it's a very important part of Celtic literature, because we don't have a lot like that, where we see something certainly outside of the lens of Christianity, in how they might see things. So for example, here we could have the Cauldron of Warming, with the Lover, the Cauldron of Motion, what's in flux in the dark time to go deep, right? Cauldron of Motion is the Lover. How are we going to connect? We're going to really light that heat, and we're going to start to build up that fire with the ways in which we are connecting into this energy. So I love that you actually have a stage here, as well as where that's going to take place is in the inner space. And then from the bottom of the deck, where the Wisdom coming down from the Green Man here. And then again, we could expand this if we move it down a little bit here. And I normally go this way with them, because visually the cauldron is above, this cauldron's in the middle, and this cauldron, well here, maybe we can fix it like that so we can see them all. Right, so then it's that understanding, and I wouldn't have pulled them this way if I was going to do that, but we're just playing here. So then we understand that this Lover card, right, the Lover energy here in the Warming is going to affect this, and here is some more information about how that is going to affect it. We know that the Green Man, this ultimate masculine energy here, this all-father energy, is going to provide wisdom if we're open to it. We were willing to go into the cave, if we're willing to find that energy, if we're really going to go deep, we're going to gain this wisdom, well, then we can pull another card about what kind of energy that we might be receiving. So this is, you know, either this, and this, or this, you know, but I would draw this, right? Because, although I think I have it numbered differently there, but this card, this is the connecting card between these two, and this is a connecting card between these two. So you could do this, no, because it's coming downward. So I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This doesn't matter, but in case you wanted to try it, there. But anyways, yeah, I'm actually really excited about this deck. Again, I'm not generally a fan of, or I don't use, I guess that's what I should say, I don't use a lot of all women, all female decks. The one that I use all the time is the Weaver's Oracle. That is masculine and feminine in female form. And so I do use that one on a consistent basis. That's one that I use all the time. But goddess decks in and of themselves, I don't use that much. But this is a deck that I feel really goes deep. Obviously, I love the Avalonian myth. I do love the construct of the Avalonian myth. And I do love the Welsh and Scottish and Irish kind of Celtic, I guess I should say, concepts that are here. So I do think as a personal reflective deck that this would be one I might pull a lot more often than I do any of my straight just kind of goddess decks. So I don't know, we'll see how it plays out over time, but I am really glad to have seen it. I've never heard of it. It's been actually out for a while. And I think Boho Tarot says the same thing. Oh no, this says 2020. I wonder if it was it doesn't show it as a reprint. For some reason, I thought I saw a walkthrough of this. Maybe it was just 3 months ago. I thought I saw like 3 years ago, and I was kind of like, wow, how did I entirely miss that deck? But no, it was 2020. So yeah, it's a relatively new deck. I never heard anything about it, and I believe Boho Tarot says the same thing on her video. We just kind of missed that somehow, and I think the artwork is beautiful. I definitely could see pulling it, you know, after doing a tarot reading with this. Definitely Tarot of the Hidden Realms. I think this would go really well with that, and that's a deck that I do love and work with. I think she mentioned some other ones, but that was one that really stood out to me as a deck that I use a lot. And then this one, because I knew that this would actually work really well with the Llewellyn Tarot as well. So those are the two that came to my mind. But yeah, okay, I hope you enjoyed this. It was a nice little find, and I am excited to work with a little bit more. And I'll definitely touch back. You know, I always touch back at the end of the year with how I have ended up working with particular decks. But I might, we'll see. I may come back sooner than that and just kind of touch bases with it. But there you go. Have a great night or day.